classical production set is a closed convex cone pointed at the origin. Not compact. When does it become compact? We find truncated at a certain point because I say, look, input 1, 16, 23, and 68 are limited. And because they are indispensable inputs, your production cone is truncated there. Because we have only one Adriatic Sea, one Mary Poppins, 3 olive trees older than 1,000 years, or whatever, you know, and one Mount Everest. Okay, so that particular activity is going to make the set. So the set is compact for a given point in time, for a given technology, because some inputs at a given point in time are limited. Theoretically, the set is just open-ended. Okay? The observation of the classical economist is it's definitely truncated. Limited land, limited amount of labor, limited amount of capital, hence decreasing return, hence the steady state to which we converge. Okay? Yes? What else can we learn from this? What else can we learn from this? Well, let's put the classical head in mind. That's the word they have in mind. With different versions. So, you know, Marx had the pessimistic view that then was sold by socialists. Smith thought, but not a big deal, you know, the steady state is going to be a lot of fun in any case. Marcus said, yeah, sure, but they fuck like rabbits, so, you know, they're not going to be very happy in the steady state, because there's going to be many of them, not him. He was, I think he was a priest or something. So he wasn't involved in the business, or at least officially wasn't. Who knows? And so, and you know, people have different views of it and put it in different time horizon. And as the 19th century progressed, they became more optimistic. You know, you read Marshall, it's a huge degree of optimism and so on. But there was this steady state looming. Okay, there was a steady state looming, and the steady state basically was this idea that at a certain point returns on some factors where decreasing enough that you stop accumulating. We have a simple way of expressing it today by saying, you know, the marginal productivity of capital becomes such that it's not worth investing anymore, and you stop there. But that's just a simple way of representing a concept that you can, that is good even if you generalize. As we will see, some of the concepts we get from the aggregate production function are absolutely not generalizable. It's been one of the worst mistakes of some fashionable representative, Samuelson first, of neoclassical economics, to stick instead to concept that they thought, well, that's very useful as an approximation, yeah, but it's not true in general. So if you stick to the silly approximation that you know is not true in general, you end up bullshitting. And those that, and then you create a lot of equivocation that is really not very useful. Okay? All right. Now let's try to understand also, what is this that I've drawn? This is an isoquant, right? You see? So actually out of that I can get isoquants. In fact, isoquants come out from that. Right? I just have a whole continuum of activities as a mathematical approximation, and by interpolating them I get an isoquant. As I said, Scarf said, this real number assumption, like, you know, there is an integer restriction. I have to use one machine, one human, you know, 1 kilo of wheat. Let me try to do the whole thing with integers. It's a nightmare. So yes, indeed, reality, economic reality out there is probably not real numbers. You know, complexification for real number is a dirty trick, but for Christ's sake, it's pretty useful. And without it, we go crazy. And given that most of the results we got, you know, carry on, that's one, you know, simplification. I'm happy to keep working. And unless there is a specific issue that really requires to take the integer restriction seriously, you know, we'll work with real numbers. Okay? Now this is relevant because what we're going to do next is Solow, right? We're going to start from Solow. And you see, the Solow paper is all about this. Something that people don't understand. It's all about that. It's about moving along an isoquant by going from an activity to another. In fact, it's a private letter that I have to ask him if I can make it public. I have a letter from him saying that's what people have not understood. My paper was about technological change. Solow actually is a very smart guy when he does theory. He's a bit politically, how can I say, feisty, or he used to be, as an old man. But that 56 paper we'll debate it Thursday is all about this. With this in mind, you understand it. Right. But we'll get to that. We'll get to that Thursday. One last thing before finishing, because we have 3 minutes. I want to make sure you understand balanced growth. So what's balanced growth? Balanced growth is I have a set of input at 0. I use them and I produce y1. y1, I split it between consumption in period 1 and another set of inputs. The set of input, I put it in and I get y2. I split it, part they consume, part they invest, and so on. Eventually, this may be evolving. Eventually, I get to a certain vector, or I approach a certain vector, xt, such that when I put it in and I get yt plus 1, and then I consume ct plus 1, and I have xt plus 1 is equal to 1 plus g xt. And therefore yt plus 2 is 1 plus g yt plus 1, and so on. What does it mean? It means that eventually my path of growth stays on the same rate. The ratio among inputs and the ratio among output is the same. There is only 3 bananas for every 2 potatoes for every 1.5 tomatoes. It's just that they blow up in size because they grow. So 3 becomes 6 and 2 becomes 4, and 1.5 becomes 3, but the ratio remains. That's balanced growth. Balanced because there is balance among the inputs and the output. The ratio remains constant. That's it. Which, if you think, is exactly moving along the array, right? There's a lot of literature. This is a notion people write late. It's von Neumann. That's why I think I meant there's von Neumann in your reading list. You may want to take a look at the von Neumann paper. It's very elegant. Von Neumann is the first that using matrix algebra and so on, and a fixed point theorem shows the existence of that, right? Then there was an open issue. If I start from a random x0, like I've done here, and I take a path of production, accumulation, and consumption according to some rule. Notice that I've said nothing about the rule here. We will have to discuss it, for which we choose consumption, right? Some rule. Do we eventually converge to the balanced growth path? Right? The balanced growth path can be written simply like x star times 1 plus g at the power t equal xt, right? This is the fixed ratio. Right, same for output. G is the growth rate, and that gives you all you need. Right? That's a balance. So it's an open question. It's called the turnpike problem. Given an arbitrary initial condition, which rules of accumulation, consumption, blah blah blah, or the temporal choice, will lead, and do they lead to a balanced growth path or not? Okay? We will not go through this. Is a fairly abstract and sophisticated matter. If you want to study it at a technical level, Lionel chapter on the handbook called Turnpike Theory has it. There's also a shorter version, more introductory, written later, so more complete, among other things, besides my results, in the Palgrave. So if you look at the Palgrave chapter on Turnpike Theory, it's fairly technical. It's it's not high mathematics, but it requires a bit of math too. This is the stuff that people debated between the 30s and the 70s and 80s. By the 80s, I think we understood completely the way it worked and put it in the storage. And unfortunately, as usual, economists, whatever they put in the storage, they forget it exists. It's a bit like physicists forgetting gravitational laws all the time. All right, but that's classical growth theory in an hour and a half, an hour and 20 minutes, okay? Yeah, it's a bit of a stretch. So, if you want the recording, I'll be happy to give you the recording if you want to go through the points. Make sure you understand these concepts and you know the references. If you don't know the references, let me know. All right? Okay, enough. If you have a question, we can take questions.